I'm headed for a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain. So come with me, we'll go and see the big rock candy mountains.
And we are on. This is the Great Classic Rock Debate. I'm Kenny.
Paul with zero qualifications, bringing up the rear.
Excellent. And Steve may or may not be joining us in a few minutes. We will carry on. Until then, we talk anything and everything classic rock. We try to keep it interesting. If you're watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our sister channel, the Great Classic Movie Debate. Couple of quick comments, real quick. On our last video, Southern Rock, actually Southern Rock Part 2, a gentleman by the name of Tiago Franca, sounds like it could be Spanish or maybe Brazilian. He wrote, "Where's Black Oak, Arkansas? Best Southern rock band ever."
Hey,
okay.
Tiago, they're right here.
Oh, okay, you're totally out of focus.
There you
go.
Oh,
there he is.
I just bought it yesterday, Tiago.
Wow. Tiago, if you're watching, this was in honor of you, buddy. All right. Black Oak, Arkansas.
I had no idea about this comment. Tiago.
Right. But you know what? Perhaps we'll do an upcoming episode and just do the whole thing about Black Oak, Arkansas, because they are more than just that one song, Jim Dandy, which everybody knows.
I listened to the first listen to, and I was trying to work, and I don't want to listen to new while I'm trying to concentrate on something else. So I said, I got to try, because I can't absorb new material.
Right.
You know, all right.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention was coming home from the gym this evening, I heard that god-awful, cringeworthy song by Green Day. I hope you've had the time of your life. And I still just fail to get to understand how classic rock radio stations play that awful song. But be that as it may, we're going to move on and get into our subject matter for tonight.
Hold on, I got to interrupt. Hopefully I won't go to hell. Jesus, help me out there. But if I did go to hell, I was the first 10 years, or a devil with first 10 years to put that song on repeat.
Right.
And they say, see what you get for being a sinner.
That's right. See what you get. Exactly.
You win, Satan. You win.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, no. Our topic for this evening is going to be simply the Beatles, or if you want to be a little more specific, Beatles songs. Okay. I think it's important that we start from this starting point, and that is, you and I did not grow up on the Beatles, because the Beatles were done. They were broken up and gone solo by the time you and I were teenagers. All right. So unlike somebody who's perhaps 5 or 10 years older than us, who had the Beatles in their teenage years, and it's more of a firsthand thing, for us, like sometime in the mid 80s, I guess it was when all the Beatles stuff got released on CD. And so for the first time ever, I went out and bought a whole bunch of Beatles CDs and started playing them. And that was my first, I had heard them on the radio, but that was the first time I could ever listen to it, intently. And if I liked the song, play it over and over again, as opposed to just hearing it on the radio. So anyway, what I thought we would do tonight is, just for kicks, I suppose, is we will each choose our favorite Beatles songs and explain why you like it and why it's important that somebody else should understand, and what makes it unique or what makes it so awesome or whatever. And we'll kind of go back and forth like that. Does that sound good?
Yeah. I have 306 in my list. How many do you have?
306 Beatles songs?
Yeah, they're all great.
Right. Well, I was
actually not joking.
No. As I was flipping through, I was saying,
torture.
This is an impossible task. Yeah.
Impossible.
So what I was looking for was songs that have some sort of a story that makes it personal to me, Yeah, because otherwise, choosing great Beatles songs, there's just too many, and the list can go on forever. Plus, every person is going to have their own favorite 5 or 10 or whatever. So ours will be unique to us, but not necessarily anybody else. So as a kid, I guess in the late 60s, my sister being 4 years older, she would play Beatles albums in her room with the door closed, but I could hear them. And even as a little kid, I thought, wow, that's good music. You know, you're not very discriminating as a little kid, but I was like, wow, those are really good songs. And I knew I liked them, even though I didn't know anything about them. And I certainly didn't know what any of the lyrics meant or whatever. So I'm going to start off like this. The first song that I want to mention is going to be I Saw Her Standing There, but it's going to be just a brief commentary. And I'm going to sort of, there you go. But I want you to add to mine. So in other words, I don't want to say, okay, wait till I'm done. And I want, anytime we're on the same song, I want it to be done together. So I want to start with I Saw Her Standing There, but I do want to transition into Eleanor Rigby. So if you have that one too, then we'll both do that. So
I don't have that one.
Okay. But here's what I want to say about I Saw Her Standing There. First of all, it was on their very first album, Please Please Me, right? That's 63. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's like the first or second track on their very first album. And in 1963, again, we're too young to really be expert commentators on this, but I've listened to enough music from 1963 that I can tell you this song must have sounded like it came from space aliens, because it was so radically different from anything that you heard on the radio. And it was raw, unbridled, 1,000-mile-per-hour energy. And I don't know how else to describe it. It just comes blasting out. And it's like those photos you see of the guy sitting in front of the wind that is blowing him backwards.
The Maxell.
Yeah. That. It's kind of like that. And I guess if you're not in 1963, you have to just sort of fake it. But yeah, the energy of that song, and I would have never known this except for, as you know, about 30 years ago or so, I started DJing. I became a private DJ, DJed a lot of wedding receptions, Christmas parties, just any kinds of private events. And anytime I had a 60s crowd, if I played that song, they went berserk. They went nuts. Yeah. And these are people who were probably even already old at that time. It didn't matter. They became teenagers again, and they went nuts when I played that song. And even as a DJ, I didn't grow up with the song, but even as a DJ playing it, you can see the effect that raw energy has on the people who did grow up with it. And it was an amazing thing to see. So I gained a whole new appreciation for a song by the Beatles that I had probably heard many times and didn't know much about it other than, why do they always have to make the girl 17? Now, to be fair, I think they were 19 when they wrote it. So it doesn't sound so bad. But when you think of the older Beatles singing about a girl who's 17, you're going, what? Anyway, that's my take on I Saw Her Standing There and why it has a special meaning to me. So go ahead.
Man, you literally, that's exactly, there was no song like it with the energy and the speed of it. It's what, 2 minutes and 12 seconds, whatever it is.
I think it's 2:45. It's less than 3 minutes, either way. Short, less than 3 minutes.
And we talked about this before, like, Kenny and I used to make fun of Metallica. Okay.
Right. We did.
We're both going to admit it. And then I think I heard Ride the Lightning. I said, this isn't bad. And then when I heard And Justice for All, I was like, oh my God, this is genius. What? For them, same with the Beatles, like, you're kidding, that was the best metaphor you've ever done. It came from outer space. Nothing was like it before. And and I think I know how they knew it was going to be good. And for you out there in the audience, a great movie is called Backbeat.
Oh, yeah.
It's about the Beatles in Hamburg when they were at this nude establishment playing, and they were honing their stuff. They had the roughest crowd of Navy guys, and it was a rough crowd. And they would just come in there and just blow. And they figured out what songs work on stage, and it's loud and proud. And it's all about this guy, what's his name? Stuart Sutcliffe.
Right.
The Beatle, he had like a brain disease, and he was a really good artist, and he wasn't a very good bass player, but he really didn't want to play bass. He just his friends. And so finally McCartney like takes his place as far as the bass player, and he goes on to paint and dies. But the Beatles, like a lot of bands you see now, they've had this bar forge. We know it's work, and we know it's listening. So once we know we put this on an album, we know people are gonna like it. So
right. Plus, in those early years, they're playing a bunch of Chuck Berry and Little Richard songs, feeding off of that, integrating it into themselves. And you know, the fact that this song, I Saw Her Standing There, was on their first album. If it had been on their fourth or fifth album, it might have still been well known or whatever, but it wouldn't have had that punch. It wouldn't have had that "It Came from Outer Space" effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Greta Van Fleet song, or what's it called? Highway song? Oh,
Highway Tune.
Highway Tune.
Yeah.
Okay, they had this song that transcended everything. You could never get here, and I could never get hearing that song.
Yeah.
There. And plus, it was referenced in Rain Man. Remember, that's the song that Rain Man sings. She was just 7, right? Dustin Hoffman sings.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a timeline for you out there. That's a clever way of getting in when this happened without saying it was 1963 when I was taking a bath. No, he says that song so you know he heard it back when it first came out.
Right. Okay, I'm going to move on to Eleanor Rigby next. Is it good? Okay, so this again is kind of a personal story. It's just, you know, it's funny how things affect you in a moment, yet you know in that moment it's going to affect me for the rest of my life.
Is this Lycus at Auburn you're going to tell me about?
Correct.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a freshman at Auburn, and I'm taking English 102. All right, and my professor's name was Ralston. And
Lycus.
What's that?
I thought it was Lycus.
No, Ralston.
Oh, okay. We had different. I thought you had Lycus at one point.
No, Ralston was his name, and he was a kind of a straight-laced guy. Had a close-cropped mustache and beard, and I don't want to say he didn't have a sense of humor, but he did have kind of a dry sense of humor. Okay, but he did not have a lot of personality. He's kind of a straight-laced, straight-shooter guy. And on day one of class, he says, let me see the hands of all the people here who like poetry. Not a single hand goes up. And so he says, okay, let me see the hands here of all the people who like pop music. Everybody raises their hand. So he then says, have you ever considered that pop music is simply poetry put to music? And there was a large, wait a second, that's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Yes, it is.
But hold on. The point that people were making was the stuff that was forced down our throat by the major British poets back in high school, Yeats and Keats, and that was not, you could put that to music and it's not going to be what we listen to. So anyway, he says, I just want you to be open-minded to it because we're going to spend this semester discussing the lyrics of pop music. And you're going to be surprised. It's going to really change your mind on what you think about poetry. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds like something I would expect a professor to say, but I'm not buying it. Okay. So what we pretty much did throughout that semester was every class session, there was one or sometimes even a second song that we would sort of dissect and analyze and discuss and all that. And practically from day one, my attitude changed because I'm like, wow, this is good. It's funny, as much as I really appreciate song lyrics now, at that time, it wasn't really a consideration for me. I just judged a song by the sound. It sounds good or it doesn't sound good. Here comes Steve. See if he's gonna join us here. He's about to pop in. So anyway, there he is.
Hey.
Steve, welcome aboard. Good timing.
Thank you, sir.
We're a few minutes in. We did a quick little discussion of I Saw Her Standing There. We're doing Beatles tonight. And I've now shifted over to Eleanor Rigby. Okay. And I'm talking about my freshman year at college. So one of the very first songs that the professor had said we're going to discuss was Eleanor Rigby, right? I can say that at that moment in time, I had heard this song so many times. I didn't feel strongly about it one way or the other. It was a Beatles song. I certainly knew it. I don't think I knew or memorized in the lyrics, but I certainly could hum it in my head, right? So he has the lyrics. He has the lyrics printed out on a sheet and also has it up on the bulletin board. And we start going through it line by line. And the way we did it in class was we would discuss one or two lines of lyrics, and then he would let people raise their hands and offer some of their own opinion or wisdom or whatever. And it really made for a lively discussion. And I can remember the look on his face, how enlightened, how thrilled he was watching us so enthralled and fascinated by the lyric discussion. He knew it was going to happen. He's been there before. He knew it was going to happen. We were the non-believers. So he started going through the lyrics. The first thing to notice, at least for me, is it is not a particularly mournful or melancholy sounding song. It doesn't wear the face of a sad song. The lyrics, that's a different story. But the sound of the song, to me, it doesn't have a sad sound. Okay. Now remember, I was 18, and it never occurred to me, even with the chorus saying, "Ah, look at all the lonely people." It never occurred to me what the song was about. So I am practically learning it for the first time as we're reviewing these song lyrics. All right. So I'm going to go through a few of them. For those of you who don't know it, Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in a church where a wedding has been, lives in a dream, waits at the window wearing a face that she keeps by the door. Who is it for? So basically, the lead character here, Eleanor Rigby, who the song is named after, she works in a church and her job is sweeping up the rice after a wedding. Not a job that most of us would want. And when she's not working, she puts makeup on and sits by the window waiting for some imaginary figure to come pick her up and take her on a date or whatever. That verse by itself, even if you don't read the rest of it, that verse by itself, it's inescapable of the loneliness, the agonizing loneliness that she lives with day to day. And listen, the three of us sitting here right now, we all have friends, we have family, we have buddies. If the three of us are buddies, right? It's hard to imagine someone who has none of these things and their daytime job, something like cleaning up a church, is the centerpiece of their existence. Okay. So then after that verse, they go into other lonely people. Where do they all come from? Where do they all belong? Now we go to Father Mackenzie. Father Mackenzie writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. My first thought was he's preaching to an empty church, but you know what? It's not necessarily empty. Even the people there aren't listening. They're going through the motions. They're going through the motions of just going to church and not even listening to him. So he's going to give the sermon, but nobody's going to hear it. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night while there's nobody there. What does he care? Same thing. He is the father at a church, probably out in the sticks somewhere with a small congregation of people who don't show up most of the time. His job, being there at the church and giving sermons that no one hears, is the centerpiece of his life. So he and Eleanor Rigby are kind of like two sides of the same coin. Both of them lonely, no friends or family that we know anything about, and living an existence of loneliness. Now, the final verse, this is the one. I got to tell you something. I was 18. I almost got teary-eyed sitting there in class, and I didn't want anybody to see it, but I was like, oh my God, this is what this song's about. Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved. So here I am, 18 years old, and now I realize for the first time in my life, this song is about this woman. Okay, she died, and no one knows. She doesn't have any friends. She doesn't have any family. She just died. And other than Father Mackenzie, no one knows. He buries her. Nobody attended the funeral. And as he walks away, wiping the dirt from his hands, she no longer her name no longer exists. It's one thing to say her body is now deceased. Her name ceases to exist. That's it. And it hit me so hard. I was sitting there saying, I know that this moment right here is going to affect me for the rest of my life. I'll never be able to get away from this. It was just, it hit me so hard. And the discussion there in class, probably 20 or 22 college freshmen, and you could tell everybody was really heavily affected by it. Now, here's where the story takes an amusing turn of comic relief, right? There was one particular girl in the class who was nice looking. I have to add that she was. I don't know whether she was very bright or not. I don't know, but she was good looking.
Her name was Jennifer Rigby, by the way.
I don't know much about her intellect. All I know is it was impossible to not notice she was very good looking. She's got her hands up. All right. So Professor Ralston, who, by the way, he called everybody Mr. or Miss, whatever, no first names. So he said, yes, Miss, Smith.
Miss Rigby.
Yeah, Miss Rigby. What are your thoughts? And so she said that she's not smiling and she's not making a joke. I want to make that part clear because she was being serious. All right. She said, my take on it is a little bit different. And he said, okay, well, art is subjective and your take has just as much value as anybody else's. Go ahead and tell us what you think. And she said, I think that Father Mackenzie killed her and disposed of the body. She said that. I'm not making it up. She said that. And it's so funny because the chorus of the song is, oh, look at all the lonely people. So she just,
And Father Mackenzie's doing his part.
Father Mackenzie, the serial killer who has a church-side cemetery to dispose of the bodies. Right?
I like it.
So it's not bad.
Funny,
It's not bad. You guys are both screenwriters, so see if you can do something with that. But anyway, so that was a moment of comic relief. And the professor said, so your take on Eleanor Rigby is a little more sinister. And he was grinning as he said it. And she was like, yeah. So anyway, I got a kick out of it. I thought it was hilarious, So clearly that's not the intent of the song, but to each his own. Anyway, we don't have to stay on Eleanor Rigby any longer. I want you to. I want you to. I just wanted to make it clear why this song is personal to me and why I like it so much. I'll let both of you guys run with it now.
I'll go first because my thing will transition to Steve from guitar. But I have an obsession. We have a friend named Jeremy who's dead now. We went to New York City like, I don't know, 3 months after 9/11, and we went down and did a real 2 days there. It was hardcore. We went we walked all day long. So there's a really old church near Wall Street, near where the towers, and it's like the graves there are 1600s and right around that period. And before that, I have an obsession with I've been to graveyards in South Carolina, New Orleans, over in Europe. And the brilliant thing about and I have photos of all these weird, bizarre names that people have.
Right.
First and last names. I've never heard either the first name and I've never heard the last name. You know what I'm saying? So when he says buried with her name, when this guy, Willoughby McDougall-head dies, there's no one ever going to be named that again.
Right.
And so that's what's really, the other thing is, Kenny was, I don't know if you got on here, but the chord, these are, Eleanor Rigby is a dissonant chord song. Everything is down sad. It's not, the chords aren't going up to what they would call a consonant chord or a dissonant chord.
Correct. Yeah, that's fair.
It's all, I think it's C and E minor. They're all minor chords.
I mean, I know but the dissonance, it's sad. It's
that's what, minor chords typically have that kind of.
Oh, okay.
Sadder.
I think you would know that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve. What else?
No, Eleanor Rigby always comes up on kind of the top Beatles songs, and it's a fantastic song. It's a masterpiece.
It is, yeah.
McCartney always plays it live. It's not one of my personal favorites. Maybe it's because it's one of those songs that I've heard over and over again. But it's one of those things again where I recognize the song for its brilliance, but it's not one of my personal favorites.
So there's no guitar and no drums in the song. Is that right?
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Wow.
It's violin, bass.
Wow. It didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. So I'm not sure there's some, I'm not a classical musician, so I don't know, but
Yeah, I think it's all violin.
and I think there's a bass what do you call it? A bass upright bass or a bass cello. I'm not sure.
Upright bass.
Yeah, string bass.
There's some
I don't
deeper
even know. Yeah, I got to think
boom,
about it.
boom, boom, boom. That's a deep. That's too.
Yeah, you're right. Huh.
But the other thing we were saying earlier about Metallica, Steve, how Metallica, except for their hardcore fans, they were 5 or 10 years ahead of everybody else. This is,
Yeah.
you imagine the Beatles say, "Hey, we're gonna do a song, right? No drums, no guitar, and it's gonna be we need violins." I'm like, what? Can you imagine? There are people, you want to play? I want a song right there. Like, no, boy, it's perfect, So anyway, I think it just takes big balls to do that.
It does, yeah. No, it was completely different. And I'm trying to remember what album was that on. Yellow Submarine.
No.
It was, I think it was Revolver.
That sounds about
Great.
Yeah.
I think so.
Because Revolver to me was kind of their first album where everybody says, Sgt. Pepper's, but I think Revolver was kind of the first album where they broke away from that early Beatles sound. And then
Correct.
It wasn't until Sgt. Pepper where you're like, okay, this is really something different that you've never really heard before.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something real quick. We don't talk about it today, but
Go ahead.
this has to do with the industry. Back in the day, the Beatles, they were like the best of the Beatles. The Beatles do this, and there were like literally 700 albums of the Beatles. And there were collections. And you also see this with Hendrix. If you look, there's probably 7,000 Hendrix albums. Some live,
Yes.
some studio, because he would go to the studio across the street in London, sign a deal, go the street across into Birmingham, sign a deal, and Led Zeppelin basically put it into that. Like Led Zeppelin's like, we're putting out albums for albums. And the Beatles had singles, and I'm not sure if Hendrix released a single. I should know that. But anyway, that's why when you say what album appeared, I'm like, oh my God, there were so many.
No, it's hard because some of their best hits were released as singles only.
I think I Want to Hold Your Hand was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of the other day.
Yeah.
Like Let It Be. That was a single. For years, I thought that was when I was a kid. I thought that was on Abbey Road, but it's not. It's a single.
Right.
See, that's what's frustrating for. I had this problem with U2. U2 released this really cool song called Three Sunrises, I think, but they only released it as a single, so you couldn't buy the CD. So I had to go out and buy this GD single, and it made me want to kill.
Right.
Serious. Put it on an epic. Now, 10, 12 years later, they had U2, the B-sides, and it was on there. But for 10, 12 years, I didn't have it. And it was weird. I had to go to this bar and play it on the jukebox.
Yeah. Well, then also with the Beatles, you had the issue where, British band. So I think even not all the songs that were originally released in Great Britain were released in the United States.
Correct.
That's right.
And
vice versa.
Order. Exactly.
Yep. Okay, Paul, do you want to go ahead? You want to go next?
Sure. I'll do one, then we'll let Steve do one.
Okay.
Oh God, my favorite one, I think. It's just a personal Paperback Writer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my God, the melody and the tune is so. I could listen to that song on repeat for 5 years and not get sick of it. It's like a unique sound, and the bass line is it. And then he's like, based on a novel by a man named, he's like this desperate guy. And he wants to be signed, and it's just like, he appears vulnerable in this song, and that's a weird thing to want to be able to do, right? I want to write paperbacks. So anyway, that's mine. I want to throw out. If you want to move on, let Steve go on. If you don't want to talk about this song,
well, I'll add this little commentary. Like, first of all, it's another Beatles song with a lot of raw energy. All right. Because, the Beatles, they have songs that lean much more towards rock, and they have songs that lean much more towards pop. My first thought before we even started this thing tonight was we should make the songs more about rock. But as I started looking through it, I go, you know what? That's a hopeless task. Let's just do what we do. So that song is one of them. It rocks, and it has a great energy and all that. And for the longest time, I didn't even know the name of it. I didn't know the name of the song was Paperback Writer.
When I first, as a kid, I thought it was the Monkees when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, oh, that's a monkey song. And someone said, oh no, that's the Beatles. You
Because
dumbass.
it sounds like "Take the Last Train to Clarksville."
Yes.
So I thought it's similar to that monkey song. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and Paul. Now, Steve, who else was playing Rickenbacker bass back then? That was not a big. I mean, Geddy Lee plays it now, we know, but back then, because Paul McCartney kind of put the bass put the hookups on his Rickenbacker. Yeah. That sound he gets, it's just incredible.
It's a great question. I don't know because I was never a bass guy. So
I just wrote a story about he put the pickups on the bass. And all right, let's move on.
Listen, we've already gotten our warning. So Steve, you pull your next Beatles song, and then we'll wrap up the rock show because we're going to do the movie show next.
Perfect. So are we doing favorite Beatles songs? Or?
Yeah, just it doesn't have to be. Well, we each grabbed 5 songs. You know what? I chose songs that had some sort of personal meaning to me. They're not necessarily my 5 favorite, but they're certainly 5 songs that I like. So just whatever you choose is fine. All
right. Well, I'll do a couple real quick. You guys are "Hey Jude" and "Let It Be." I think those are my 2 favorite Beatles songs of all time. They probably really don't need much explaining. I think most people are familiar with it. And they're also very personal. Again, speaking of our friend Jeremy, I think at his funeral, we had an online funeral during COVID for him.
Right.
We played "Let It Be," and I think that's the greatest Beatles song of all time.
It's good.
And then let me just throw out 2 other ones. And I think a lot of people are going to laugh at this one. Me being a drummer, I love Ringo's voice. I also love his drumming. And for everybody that gives Ringo flack, I would say, what drummer is worth more than any other drummer on the face of the earth? Ringo. And so for me, one of my favorite songs is "Octopus's Garden." I know.
I like the song. I'm not going to bash it.
I love the chorus of it, and I think the best part, what makes that song for me, is I love the lyrics, but number 2, it's the chorus, and you hear a lot of Lennon's chorus on that. And of the 4 Beatles, he's probably my least favorite singer. But on that's the glue that holds that track together. And then I'm going to throw out another one that this is a Lennon song. "Happiness is a Warm Gun," which is off the White Album.
Right.
I just love the raw and the grittiness of that, especially when it goes into the chorus. It's so raw. It's great for the time, and it's kind of that transition period where I think Helter Skelter is on that.
Yes. Yeah.
I could feel a lot of that. Hey, we could do metal, we could do hard rock if we want to. Yeah. And that's the brilliance of the Beatles, is that they could do anything and it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So "Happiness is a Warm Gun."
Okay, good. Quick question.
Go ahead.
Wasn't "Hey Jude" written by Paul McCartney for John Lennon's son Julian? Wasn't that the basis?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I think
want to make sure I had that right.
Yeah, and he shortened it to Jude just because I think he was like, I can't get Julian to sound,
because the same reason that Bon Jovi fucked up, screwed up Love. He gave Love a bad name. Paul McCartney's way smarter than Bon Jovi. He got the right number of beats lyrically in this song. Paul McCartney, you're a genius, buddy.
But does anybody not like "Hey Jude"?
No, it's a good song.
I mean, that's the greatest. It's like the greatest, one of the top 2 greatest songs of all time from the Beatles. Yeah. And I would say this: there was a radio station in Orlando probably about 20 years ago that signed off as a rock station on a Friday afternoon, and the end part of "Hey Jude," where they just say "na na 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 na," they let that play on a continuous loop until Monday morning. So for 48 hours, that's all they. It was kind of awesome. I kept going back. I'm like, yep, they're still playing that.
Still playing.
I saw him at Joe Robbie Stadium where the Dolphins play. I don't know what it's called now, but when you play that song, he always ends with that song, if I'm not mistaken. And then you got 60, 75, 80,000 people singing the song back.
Right.
It's the coolest feeling. You really,
oh yeah. He usually switches it up. I've seen McCartney a couple of times, and I love going on. There's a website called Setlist, and setlist.com or something like that. And he usually has like 5 or 6 encores. Sometimes Hey Jude is the end, but he usually does Hey Jude and Let It Be, and then he'll throw in a couple of other. Live and Let Die is also in there, which is awesome live too. Not a Beatles song, but that's probably his best solo song in my opinion.
Cool.
We can argue about that another time.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, listen, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. We won't even do any nominations because we're just gonna stay on the Beatles. And you know what? Next episode, we will continue what we started tonight because we just scratched the surface. Any final thoughts? Say them now.
I killed Paul.
Very good.
I love Ringo, and I'm actually going to see him here next month, so I can't wait.
Steve, just for the record, on my list here that I wrote down, I was going to mention with a little help from my friends. So we'll get to that next time, though. Okay, so for tonight, that's it. You're watching and listening to the Great Classic Rock Debate. I'm Kenny.
I'm Paul.
I'm Steve.
Yes, and if you're watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will love you for that. Until we meet again, we will see you next time.